Welcome back.
How are you?
Great to see you. So, give me the clip notes on this case.
Well, the case is about a woman who developed something called Steven Johnson syndrome, where your skin burns up from the inside, and you're left crippled. This woman, this is a result of her taking an NSAID, which is Sulidac is the name of the NSAID. But the problem is this: the jury came back and they heard that they heard about the tragedy, but they heard the story behind the tragedy. They heard that this company, this generic company that had sold her this product, understood that people taking this product have a high risk of having this syndrome that left her blind, by the way, burned 60% of her body, has her on a feeding tube right now, by the way. She's crippled for life. But they understood that that was a problem, and they chose not to warn because they knew the direction that the Supreme Court was taking. Long before this ruling, it's been very evident the Supreme Court has been on the side of big corporations. I mean, this last go-around, there was 16 decisions pro-U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Out of 16, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce won 13. So they understood, this generic company understood that they could sell this product, not warn, and if they killed somebody, it didn't make any difference. Right now, 80% of all the pharmaceuticals sold in America are generics. And the American public, 70% of the American public is on some type of medication. Most of that is generic. But they gave the generic pharmaceutical companies a free pass to kill people. There's no other way to put it. They can kill a person, they can blind them, they can cause them to have brain damage, neurological illnesses, birth defects. This Supreme Court said that's perfectly okay. The taxpayers will take care of the victim after they've been crippled. The company doesn't have any responsibility. That is this corporate-controlled Supreme Court. It's the worst probably since the 1930s, unquestionably. They're owned, operated by the U.S. Supreme Court, by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
This is mind-boggling. Now, you said this is an NSAID. That's an acronym for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, which is what aspirin and Tylenol and ibuprofen are. This is a drug this woman took for a headache or for a fever, and it burned her skin off her body?
Shoulder pain, it burned 60% of her body, disabled her permanently. Let me tell you what the jury
took it for shoulder pain.
For shoulder pain. Here's the problem with this, Tom. Not only did she burn up from the inside out, she then, after it burns you up, it causes your skin to calcify. This is a common problem with these types of medications. This company knew it, but here's the important part, Tom. They also knew that the Supreme Court, it was so predictable that even after they had been told, listen, the problem is the generic is no different from the original drug that caused these problems. In the last 2 years, this is very interesting, Tom. In the last 2 years, I've handled cases similar to this one with generic drugs. You've had people have had neurological diseases, strokes, blindness, birth defects, Crohn's disease, paralysis, death, brain damage of every kind. And every time we took a look at the case, the generic company had a history of knowing that the original medication caused these problems. And they understood that in some instances, Tom, these medications had been removed from the market. And the generic company put them out there because they could make money, and they knew the U.S. Supreme Court would give them a free pass to kill and cripple people. There's no other way that's not at all hyperbole. This Supreme Court, under Alito and Roberts and Scalia, all the usual knee-jerk suspects that work for corporate America, they knew what was going to happen here, and they know that this is just a free pass for the pharmaceutical industry.
Is there
worse than?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, worse than that, Tom. Now you're going to have the main manufacturers are simply going to move their product into generics more quietly, secretly, they're going to set up shell companies, move it to generic where they have this protection, and then they can sell all pharmaceuticals with complete, utter immunity. 70% of the American public now is taking some type of pharmaceutical, far worse than the NSAID that's ruined this woman's life.
Pat, we have just a minute left. This was a Supreme Court decision. Are we left with a legislative remedy, or is this simply the end of the road?
It's the end of the road. There'll be no legislative remedy. Obama argued on behalf of the pharmaceutical industry here, Tom. Obama's administration appeared in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the drug company. Obama's Solicitor General stood up and said, this is really good. We need to you need to rule in favor of the pharmaceutical industry. And you know what? Obama administration, by the way, the FDA with an executive order could have made this disappear. It never would have been a problem. They are fully owned and operated by the drug company, just like the Supreme Court is.
And just like virtually every member of Congress, with the possible exception of the Progressive Caucus, which is 80-some-odd members. Mike Papantonio, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Tom.